Hello everyone, this is Incognito Gaming. As you can see in the title of this video, I will be breaking down how Undisputed can improve on the defensive aspect of the game. A lot of community members, including myself, feel like defense has been severely lacking, and just like the last video, I'm going to break down a few reasons why that may be the case. In order for this to be a true, authentic experience, defense has to be a big part of the game, especially with some of the fighters that they have added and plan to add in the near future. So without any further delay, let's get into some of these suggestions. The block in Undisputed has been comparable to the block in Street Fighter or the shield button in Smash Bros. Nothing gets through, and it takes more than it realistically should to break. We only have the option of the up and down block online, and it's almost impenetrable, making holding block a sort of a defensive meta in the game. The block catches everything, and when you're holding the down block, you're able to protect your head and body against pretty much every punch, except of course the body uppercut. We were promised the ability to punch around the guard in the early development videos, and so far that hasn't been working out like most of us have expected. Don't get me wrong, there are occasional bleed throughs where you see the fighter's head move, but it's hard to tell if these punches are scoring or if they're still being counted as being blocked. And to me, it seems like punch tracking tends to direct the aim of the punch directly to the guard instead of around it, unless of course you use the body uppercut. Maybe this has been done for balancing purposes since we can't use a 6-directional block online or in any other mode than simulation yet, but playing the game and feeling like you should be getting around someone's guard or at least bleeding through the block is frustrating to say the least since it's so strong. To unincentivize just holding block, the block health has to be balanced out better. The accumulation of damage to a player's block throughout the fight has to be increased. If someone is only balling up and not using any head movement or getting out of the way, their block should have the chance of getting critically damaged and their own punch power should decrease from their arms being injured. This will force the players to have to do more with their defense than just holding down R2 and moving forward and moving back. Another thing that I feel should be added is similar to the parry system that games like Street Fighter and Smash Bros use. When timed and released perfectly within a few frames of the punch hitting your glove, it can activate a swiping animation that can be acted out of quickly with a punch. This can also open a counter window that will close if the player doesn't act quick enough. This, however, should only be able to be done while using the 6-point block system. Otherwise, the game will turn into a pump block showcase. And Steel City, please allow us to use the 6-point block in more modes than just Sim. This would help solve a lot of issues with blocking spammers' punches and cause defense to be based on actual skill instead of just button holding. I don't feel like it should only be a simulation thing to have to use that 6-directional block. It should be an optional but integral part of the game if used properly. Last thing about block, we need a clearer indication for both the player blocking and the player getting blocked if the punches are getting through or not. There is a sound effect that I'm not really a fan of that sort of tells you, but it sounds like walking in socks and sandals in the rain. Not really a realistic sound for blocking a punch. This is one of the reasons why I prefer the old HUD because of the potential that it had. When someone is getting hit, that old HUD could potentially light up, showing exactly where that punch is landing so the fighter can adjust their block or move. And that light can also tell the person that's throwing that what they were doing is working as some positive reinforcement. Please consider at least bringing the torso and head back so we can have more of an indication of what exactly is going on in the ring. The slip and weave have been a cause for a lot of complaint in the community. I mainly chalk this up to the way that punch tracking has been implemented in the game so far, but since everyone is getting hit by everything, it makes the slip and the weave system seem a lot worse than it probably actually is. But with that being said, the slip and weave still have a lot of work that can be done to them. My main complaint with the weave is the lack of mobility that we have when we use it. The forward lean and the back lean for the weave are pretty fair and acceptable, but the side to side leans feel very restrictive. When the fighter leans to the side and stops, it almost feels like he has a metal stent in his back preventing him from leaning as far as he should be able to. And with the way that punch tracking is implemented, it feels like you aren't going anywhere and just opening yourself up to being hit. For this game to have a guy like Caleb Plant who uses all the angles he can by just moving his upper body, the weave range of motion will need to be increased drastically, as well as the speed of which we can get from one side to the other. And here's another area where boxer authenticity can be implemented. Not every fighter should be able to move like Caleb Plant or Shakur Stevenson. The fighters not known for their head movement should have that reflect in their attributes with how fast and also the range of motion of which they can weave. This, again, will help increase the authenticity and help people to actually choose how they want to go into each match with the fighter that they select. This has been implemented, tentatively, and I give them credit for that with the certain badges that have been put on. But this needs to be upped a notch so we can actually tell the difference between every fighter with their head movement and their speed of which they can weave. Slipping is also something that could be a lot better in this game. I'm hoping they add more slip animations to the game as time goes on, because not every slip to the side is completely bent over. And to me, slipping to the side of your lead foot looks like their knee just went out. The speed of transitioning from one slip to another should be increased as well. Sometimes your opponent will just go on a throwing clinic, and at the current speed of transitioning from one slip to the next, there's only so much you can dodge, so button mashers win these interactions. And currently, with the way that stamina balancing and the current punch tracking that the game has, that type of style is encouraged. Having a slip that is reliable will encourage players to take some time and actually learn the defensive mechanics of the game. Of course, both the slip and the weave have to be linked to the vulnerability system that is planned to be implemented. If someone is spamming slips or weaving a bunch and they are timed correctly, they should be severely punished for it. And if someone's low on stam, their weave speed and distance should decrease accordingly to prevent the exploitation of these mechanics. Speaking of new mechanics and animations, the forward slip was a good addition to the game. I've heard some people not happy with the animations, and I can understand that to a degree. We still can't exactly do the Mike Tyson peekaboo style yet with the moving forward slips, but I'm hoping that this is built on so we can eventually get to something close to that. And what will need to be implemented soon is a backward slipping animation as well. Right now, since the punches going forward are so bad, there is no need for it because they miss everything anyway. But if and when these punches get improved, there will also need to be a counter for those attacks. Otherwise, that will just end up being the new meta. Another thing that I really hope the developers are not married to is the control for the slips. Clicking down on the analog just to perform a slip isn't really efficient to me. I personally feel like the slip should just be linked to the weave. Just holding down L2 and flicking the analog should be enough to make your fighter slip where you want them to. With that being changed, you won't have to worry about trying to just move backwards and accidentally slipping instead. I also like the idea of being able to slip to one side and holding your head there to potentially create a better angle for your counterattack. Which brings me to my next point, that is something that 100% needs to be added to the game. We have to be able to punch while slipping and punch during the weave. This would be a huge tool to create counter windows, and it will also help make timing your opponent a more viable option. This, implemented with the vulnerability, will help create realistic outcomes to someone who is just button mashing. Ultimately, punch tracking has a lot to do with how bad the weave and slip are. But if I had to put a number on it, I would say it was about 50% punch tracking and 50% the amount of improvements that are needed to be made to the actual defensive systems that are in the game. I'm not a game developer by any means, but I feel like there's nothing that I said here that is out of reach for this game studio to actually put and implement into the game to make it more authentic and realistic. An issue that's been plaguing the game since its early access release is the lack of damage that punches have when they land. This is one of the core issues with the gameplay, and the developers have even admitted it themselves. Until this is fixed, there is no real punishment for not playing any defense. So players online just swing away because they're not getting punished for getting hit. This game also needs to have a form of hit stun that can't be punched out of immediately depending on how directly the fighter got hit. Otherwise, we get what we've been getting, which is a bunch of rock'em sock'em robots with pillow-fisted fighters. In addition to impact of the punches being greater and added hit stun, Players should also run the risk of being stopped on their feet if they refuse to defend themselves, which is what would happen in real life. Hearing Kenny Bayless say, "Show me something or I'm stopping this," before a round starts as a warning can add to the immersion and let the player know that protecting themselves is not going to be an option, but something that they have to do. And if a player is hurt and just balling up and holding block and not doing anything else, there should be the potential of the ref stepping in and ending the fight. This will incentivize players to actually play the game instead of just using exploits. Like I mentioned, this should only happen when someone is hurt. I described what I meant by that in my previous video about a hurt state, a time when a fighter is buzzed, still has 60-70% of his abilities, but needs to focus on defending himself, being different than a rock state. And this is something that can help authenticate that hurt state if it is added. Someone that is hurt can still be dropped and can potentially get rocked, but if they're not defending themselves, they can also get stopped and just lose the fight completely. Players need to have the threat of losing to force them to get good at something. So to make people pay attention to defense, they have to be punished more severely for the damage that they are taking. Defense in real boxing isn't an option, it's a necessity. Right now in Undisputed, the importance of defense doesn't come across like I imagine the devs want it to. That can be changed with a lot of the suggestions that I put in this video today. I do hope that defense does get better, especially with guys like Caleb Plant and Shakur Stevenson coming in the game, with defensive fighting being their main tactic. If defense isn't implemented properly, then everybody's just going to hate using those characters because they won't be authentic to who they are. But I would never claim to be a boxing connoisseur or a boxing expert, so if there's anything that I missed or anything that I should have added, feel free to put it in the comments, and also put that in the Discord so the devs can see that and potentially add that to the game. So if you like this video or any of the other videos I've done, please post them in the Discord so the devs have a higher chance of seeing them, because ultimately this is just about getting the best game that we possibly can out of Steel City. So again, thank you for watching. I'm Incognito Gaming, and I'll potentially catch you in the next one.